Welcome back to the Great Indian AI podcast channel, everyone. Today we're diving deep, really deep into a book that I'm sure many of you have at least heard of.
Man's Search for Meaning, right?
Oh, got it, by Viktor Frankl.
Well, yeah, this one's been on my list for a while. Actually, just picked up a copy.
Well, get ready to have your mind blown. Over 10 million copies sold.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's consistently ranked as one of the most influential books ever written, and for good reason. On the Great Indian AI podcast channel, we love to dig into the heart of things.
Unpack the ideas, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And with Man's Search for Meaning, there's a lot to unpack, especially for our listeners who, like us, are always searching for deeper understanding and ways to navigate this crazy thing we call life.
Well, I mean, the title itself is pretty intriguing. Man's Search for Meaning kind of speaks to this universal human need, don't you think?
Absolutely. We all crave that sense of purpose, that feeling that our lives matter. But what's really fascinating about this book is where it comes from.
Yeah, didn't Frankl write this after surviving the Holocaust?
He did. He was a psychiatrist imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps during World War II. He experienced unimaginable suffering, lost his entire family, and yet out of those ashes, he found a way not just to survive, but to find meaning in the midst of it all.
That's pretty powerful. So what's the key takeaway here? Is it like a guide to surviving trauma?
It's more than that. Frankl doesn't sugarcoat the horrors he experienced. In fact, he argues that suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience. We can't always avoid it.
Okay, so what's the point then?
The point is that we have a choice in how we respond to that suffering. We can choose to let it crush us, or we can choose to find meaning in it.
So it's not about pretending everything's okay or ignoring the pain. It's about finding something that gives us a reason to keep going even when things are tough.
Exactly. And that's where his theory of logotherapy comes in.
Logotherapy. That's a new one for me. What's that all about?
It's basically a form of therapy that focuses on finding meaning in life. Frankl believed that the primary drive in humans is not pleasure, like Freud suggested, but the will to meaning.
So even when we're facing incredible hardship, we're still driven by this need to find meaning.
Yes, Frankl observed this firsthand in the camps. He saw that the prisoners who were able to find some sense of purpose, even in the smallest of ways, were more likely to survive.
That makes sense. But how do you find meaning in a place like a concentration camp?
Well, Frankl gives several examples in the book. For some, it was about acts of kindness towards fellow prisoners. Helping others, even in the darkest of times, gave them a sense of purpose.
Makes you wonder what you would cling to in that kind of situation.
Absolutely. For others, it was about clinging to the hope that they would see their loved ones again. Or maybe finding beauty in a sunset or a blade of grass.
So even those tiny glimmers of hope or beauty could be enough to keep someone going.
Exactly. Frankl tells this incredibly moving story about a prisoner who was on the verge of giving up. He had lost all hope of ever seeing his family again. Frankl encouraged him to imagine that reunion, to focus on the love he had for his family.
And that helped him.
It gave him a reason to fight for survival. That's the power of finding meaning. It can literally be life-saving.
Wow. Okay, so how does this apply to us today?
Well, most of us, thankfully, will never experience the horrors of a concentration camp. But we all face challenges in our lives, right? Whether it's a job loss, the death of a loved one, or even just feeling stuck and unfulfilled.
The daily grind can get to you sometimes.
It definitely can. Logotherapy teaches us that even in those difficult times, we can choose to find meaning.
So how do we do that? Where do we even start?
Well, Frankl believed that meaning isn't something we create out of thin air. It's something we discover.
Discover how?
It's out there, waiting to be found, often in our interactions with the world, our relationships, our work, or our creative pursuits.
So it's about paying attention to what already resonates with us.
Exactly. And also being open to new experiences, new ways of contributing to the world.
I'm starting to see how this book has become so influential. It's not just about surviving trauma, it's about living a more meaningful life, period.
Precisely. And Frankl developed specific techniques to help people cultivate that sense of meaning.
Like what?
One technique is called de-reflection.
De-reflection. Okay, break that down for me.
It's about shifting our focus away from ourselves and our problems and towards something bigger.
Like what kind of something bigger?
It could be our values, our goals, our contributions to the world, anything that gives us a sense of purpose beyond our own immediate needs.
So it's like taking the spotlight off of our own worries and anxieties and shining it on something more meaningful. Kind of like getting out of our own heads, right?
Exactly. And, For our listeners on the Great Indian AI podcast channel, who are always looking for ways to grow and learn, I think this is particularly relevant.
Definitely. We're constantly bombarded with information and distractions.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the noise and lose sight of what truly matters.
Right. Logotherapy reminds us to step back and ask ourselves, what is my purpose? What gives my life meaning?
And those are big questions, but they're important ones to grapple with.
Absolutely. Now, it's important to note that not everyone agrees with Frankl's ideas.
Right. Every theory has its critics.
Some argue that logotherapy oversimplifies suffering, or that it places too much emphasis on individual responsibility.
And some people might find it difficult to apply in certain situations.
Of course, no one approach is a cure-all. But even if you don't agree with everything Frankl says, I think there's a lot of wisdom to be gleaned from his work.
Definitely. Especially his emphasis on the human capacity for resilience and the power of finding meaning even in the darkest of times.
Well said. And on that note, I want to encourage our listeners to check out Man's Search for Meaning for themselves. It's a powerful read and a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, there's always hope.
Always hope. Couldn't agree more.
And for those who want to explore these ideas further, there are tons of resources available on logotherapy. You can find books, articles, even workshops.
There's a whole world of resources out there.
The journey of finding meaning is unique to each individual. But resources like these can be invaluable guides along the way.
Couldn't agree more.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive into man's search for meaning and the profound ideas of Viktor Frankl. Thank you for joining us here on the Great Indian AI podcast channel, where we explore the ideas that shape our understanding of ourselves and the world. We hope this episode has sparked some reflection and perhaps even inspired you to embark on your own search for meaning.
After all, isn't that what life's all about?
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's deep dive. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. And if you're new to the Great Indian AI podcast channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. We release new deep dives every week on a variety of fascinating topics. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Thanks for listening, everyone.